Americans would just rather sit on their phone instead of get to know their client. I feel like a lot of the reasons caregivers struggle is because they don't take time to read the individualized service plan that's put in every home that a caregiver goes into.
Wow, guys, can you believe it? We're already over 20 episodes into Nick Speaks, but here's the truth. I couldn't have done it alone. The amazing team at Goodnight Podcasting Solutions has been with me every step of the way, from those early strategy sessions all the way to editing, promotion, and even helping me land guests. They've made it so all I have to do is show up, record, and focus on delivering the message. Kyle at Goodnight Podcasting Solutions tailors everything to your unique needs and is so creative to give you what you're looking for. But one thing's for sure, he gives 110% to help you create an incredible podcast. So if you've ever thought about starting your own podcast, now's the time. Hit the link in the show notes, set up a strategy session with Kyle, and get ready to take your podcast to the next level. Trust me, you won't regret it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of the Nick Speaks podcast, the podcast dedicated to the disabled community, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud about the issues that matter to the disabled the most. I am Nicolas Comstock, your crippled host. Hey, that actually rhymes. I may start using that. I'm Nicolas Comstock, your host of the Nick Speaks podcast. I am so glad you're joining me here today for this installment. Before I get into today's show, I want to give some housekeeping notes. We are just a very few shy subscribers away from 600 on my YouTube channel. As of this recording, I believe I'm at 588 on the subscriber count on YouTube. So that may change between now and when this airs, but as of right now, I am like 10 or 11 away from 600. So if you're listening to this podcast right now, I appreciate it. But when you're able to get to a computer or a phone that has YouTube, please go over to the Nick Speaks podcast on YouTube and hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so that you can get notified every time a new episode of the Nick Speaks podcast comes out, which is every Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. Also, if you want me to come speak at your event or be on your podcast, please email me at nickspeaksofficial@gmail.com. You can also use this for, I already said that, for speaking events and just to also tell me what's going on with the show, how you like it, maybe some suggestions you would give me for topics to talk about, or if you want to come on and hang out with me and tell me your story, whether you're a disabled person like myself or whether you have worked in the disabled space for years. I want to hear from you. I want you to come on my show. So email me at nickspeaksofficial@gmail.com. You can also find this podcast on Apple and Spotify. So if you have either one of those two platforms, you can listen, and you can also find me on YouTube. Okay, now that we've gotten those things out of the way, I want to talk to you guys because this week I had the privilege to participate in a panel with other disabled folks just like myself. And we were able to give our perspective on what our life experience has been like with DSPs. Now you're saying, Nick, what is a DSP? It is a fancy uppity way of saying caregiver. And it kind of, I don't want to blow it off and say it's a fancy uppity way. It's giving that role a more professional title. So that's what the term DSP means. I mean, it does sound fancy and uppity, but when it all comes down to it, we want our caregivers to feel like they're in a real, genuine profession. So that is why the term has been coined DSP, direct support professional. So I was invited this past week, it was actually on my birthday, to participate in this panel and share my life experience that I've had with DSPs. And one of the things that I brought up was if there could be more training and more understanding between the direct support professional and the client, that even though the client does not sign the caregiver's paycheck, the direct support professional's paycheck, that they are still the boss. They control what goes on. I am my caregiver's, in my opinion, I am my caregiver's direct supervisor because they are in my home. They are providing a service for me. What I say goes within the scope of their job. Now, I want to say this, that scope is very large. You don't just come in and do a list of things that's on the paper and then go home. Although some caregivers have that attitude. And I've said many times on my TikTok, and I believe a few times on this podcast, that if caregivers have the attitude that I'm just there to do what's on the paper, a list of to-dos, and go home, you really need to get out of the field, because caregiving is so much more than just a written list of duties that you must perform every day. I mean, if you're a good caregiver, and I'm sure there are a lot of you out there, you're going to treat your clients like family at the end of the day. So you're going to go above and beyond what your job scope actually is. But anyway, I brought this up in the panel because within the last, I would say, year or two, maybe 3, I've had some pretty strong disagreements with my own personal caregiver because they say because I don't sign their paycheck and the agency that I'm with signs their paycheck, that I am not their boss. They're the one that signs their paycheck is their boss. And I strongly disagree. And when I brought this up with the panel, they agreed with me as well. In fact, one of the other ladies that was on there said that her agency director made it very clear that the client is in charge, because you're in this client's home. Yes, you are there to work. Yes, you do have someone else sign your paycheck. Unless you're private pay, then the client really does sign your paycheck. But yes, in many cases, you do have someone else sign your paycheck. But at the end of the day, you're not in your boss's actual home. You are in the person's home that you're providing the service to. So because of that, they are the boss. I am the boss as the client. And I've had, this discussion on TikTok many times, and it's been a mixed bag. And I know that it's been a mixed bag for me and my personal apartment. A lot of some of my caregivers, yes, Nick, you are the boss. You are my boss. Some of my caregivers are like, hell no. My boss is the person that signs my paycheck. And I'm sitting here saying, well, I'm the one that's consuming your services. You're providing a service for me. Number one, because I can't do it myself. And number two, that's because you signed up to do it. So for those reasons, I'm your boss. And if it wasn't for your client's caregiver, your agency would have no reason to sign your paycheck. So that is why I say there needs to be more training and more understanding between the caregivers before they go into the client's home. What the client says goes. Now, this does not mean that the client has the right to treat you like a slave. I've heard awful stories of caregivers that have come to work for me and they've said, Nick, my clients have tried to make me get on the floor and scrub their floors with a toothbrush. No, that does not happen. And these caregivers that were telling me this story that I've had multiple times from other caregivers, they were black. So it was for them, it was a race thing for them. And come to find out, they found out that their client was extremely racist and didn't really care to have black caregivers. But so unless your client is literally trying to be racist in a way or just treat you like a slave no matter what your race is, they are the boss. What they say goes. You're in their home. I've said this before on a podcast, I believe a couple weeks ago. You have to understand, caregiver, that when you come into a situation and you're taking care of somebody's most intimate details, that you are an intruder to your client. You're coming in on their personal space. They've been used to not having you for years, and then all of a sudden this stranger pops up and, you know, they have to let you wipe their butt. They have to let you wipe their peri area. They have to let you help them wash dishes, prepare meals. And preparing meals is really hard because, you know, if you don't prepare it right and your client refuses to eat it, then that means your client doesn't get nourishment. So, you know, it's really hard. But at the end of the day, caregivers really need to understand that when you go into your client's home, number one, that's their home. So you're on their territory. You're not on your boss's territory that signed your paycheck. You're on your client's territory. So they are the boss. They say what happens within the time frame that you're there. Now, your client does not have the right to call you off, call you while you're off the clock and say, do this for me. You work for me. I'm your boss. Not while you're off the clock. They're not. And I know that some caregivers give out their numbers to clients, and there's a lot of agencies that are against that. Now, I'm here in Ohio, and they're not so tight on that anymore. But when I was in Indiana, man, they were tight on caregivers having clients' numbers and clients having caregivers' numbers. I mean, they just didn't want it to happen. And I have called my caregivers off the clock and said, hey, can you do this for me tomorrow? I forgot to mention it to you today. And most of them have been fine with that. In fact, all of them have been. So just understand that, caregiver, when you are in your client's home, your client runs the show. End of story. End of story. And that's what I told this panel that I wish we could get across to our caregivers, because a lot of them feel that they are doing us a good favor. Like they are being a good Samaritan because of what they are doing. Because if we didn't have them, we couldn't live. So caregivers feel like they have a heavy say so in the way they can treat us and the way they show up to work late sometimes. They feel like they can get us out of bed whenever they want to, as long as they do it within the time frame that they're there. And that's just not really the case. So, in fact, that's not the case at all. So, caregivers, your client's in charge when you're in their home. End of story. That's my opinion. If you want to come on the show and debate me, I would love to have you come on the show and debate me, or debate me in the comments. But that's what I think about that. And then something else that we talked about is that because, for example, I'm here in Columbus, Ohio, and here in Columbus, Ohio, we have a very high immigrant status when it comes to caregivers. 100% of my staff are from Cameroon, which is a country in Africa. And so a lot of them are not acclimated to the culture. They don't know the American food. They don't understand a lot of our words. They don't understand our customs, you know. Some of them think that cheddar cheese goes on blueberry muffins. No, I'm here to tell you, cheddar cheese does not go on blueberry muffins. I had a caregiver do that to me about a year or two ago, and I about gagged. And he tried to convince me that cheddar cheese and blueberry muffins go perfect together. Trust me, they do not. It is not a food combo that you want to try. So it would be great if somehow the departments of disability services all across the country could somehow get these caregivers who are willing to do the job, who are from other countries, to get them acclimated somehow to the culture before they send them to the caregiver client or to the site where they're going to be caregiving. You know, it would help that if, caregiving agencies would be required to teach all of their caregivers, whether they're foreigners or not, how to cook a basic week worth of meals, how to cook a meatloaf, how to cook a taco salad, how to, make a pizza, how to, make spaghetti. It would help so much. And I also said on this panel that, I want to get as close with my caregivers as possible. And one of the things that I really struggled with the current agency that I have now, even though I love them and they've been fantastic to me since I've been with them August of 2024, is that because my caregivers are from another country, it's almost like we don't really have anything in common. And a lot of them would like to sit on their phone. And you get this happening with Americans a lot too. But I tell you, man, I mean, these foreigners love their phone. And you think Americans are bad. I mean, sometimes I have to call my caregiver over and be like, can you please do your job? I mean, I know like your family's on the other side of the world in Cameroon and they're about to wrap up for the day, or maybe they're just waking up, but I need you here and I need you present, and I really want to build a relationship with my caregivers. And that's been really, really difficult, with the fact being that 100% of my staff are from another country. So there are so many factors. There's language barriers. There's not knowing much about the other country. because we come from two totally different cultures. Also, even Americans would just rather sit on their phone instead of get to know their client. I feel like a lot of the reasons caregivers struggle is because they don't take time to read the individualized service plan that's put in every home that a caregiver goes into. At least that's how it is here in Ohio. I don't know how it works in other states, but I'm sure they have something similar to an individualized service plan that says everything that the client likes to do or what makes the client sad or mad or whatever. And it is the requirement of every caregiver to read that plan. It is like the Bible for caregiving, okay? Your client's ISP is the Bible for their life. It tells you everything you need to know. And then I shouldn't say everything, quite a bit of things. And then there's that opportunity for you to sit down with your client and say, what do you like to do? Or I heard that you love basketball in your plan, So one of my other main points on this panel was that we need to work on caregivers really developing relationships with their clients and getting off the phone. Because if you're there for 16 hours, you've got to do more than sweep a floor once and make sure your client gets fed. Engage with them. Love on them. Let them know that you're there for them. Let them know that you're someone that they can confide in. Because a lot of these clients don't have family, especially if you're a caregiver that goes into a group home situation. A lot of these parents threw their kids in a group home and said, you deal with them. I don't want to deal with them. Or, you've got these special needs parents who are helicopter parents when it comes to caregivers, but yet they don't want to do any of the work when it comes to caregiving. So you really have to step in as a caregiver and say, look, you're my guy, you're my chick. What can I do to make your life better? And what can I do to be a better caregiver? And, sit down with each other. And clients, I would encourage you, I do this all the time. I ask my caregivers, what can I do for you to be a better client? What can I change? Because at the end of the day, as much as the agencies don't want you to have a relationship with your client, which is ridiculous if you're there with them 5 to 6 days a week or 7 days a week, it's at the end of the day, it's a relationship, and you have to figure out how you're going to work together, especially if you're spending 8 to 16 to 24 hours together. And I know that some people don't have 24-hour care, which is great. If you don't need that level of care, good for you. I would like to get to a point one day where I don't need somebody with me 24/7, but at the same time, if I ever got to that point, if I ever get to that point where I don't need somebody with me 24/7, I really don't know what I would do with myself, because I've always had a caregiver for the last several years with me for 24/7. I mean, actually, my whole life, it's never really stopped. So to go from 24/7 and then not having anybody around, whether I end up cutting my hours or whether God ends up healing me, I wouldn't know what to do with not having anybody around me, because I've had a caregiver around me 24/7 for the last several years. So that is the second thing that I've talked about in the panel, is telling these caregivers to really build a relationship with us and getting them acclimated if they're foreign caregivers, to the culture before they go in to the client's home and realize that, hey, that TV may be out in the living room and the client may watch TV in their bedroom, but it's still their TV. So you need to ask if it's okay to watch. And you need to be sure that, you're not on the phone 24/7. And you need to be sure that when you are watching TV, that the volume's not up so your client's not disturbed with what they're doing. And another thing is, too, I didn't say this on the panel, but caregivers, especially mine, listen up. Even though I love you, don't touch the thermostat. And I think husbands and wives and girlfriends and boyfriends have this fight around the country, around the world. It has nothing to do with whether or not you're a caregiver and you live with a client part-time or full-time. But don't touch your client's thermostat. If they want it at a certain temperature and you're too hot, guess what? Get as without clothes as you can without being inappropriate. And if you're cold, bundle up. I've been known to have my air on 65 in February because I do not like being hot. In fact, I'm sitting here right now in my room taping this episode, actually getting pretty hot because I don't have my industrial fan turned on right now because it would be too noisy for you guys. Maybe you guys wouldn't hear it, but I would hear it and it would impair my ability to talk. So that's why it's off. So caregivers, do not touch your client's thermostat. I'm trying to see what else we got from the panel. I think that's really all that I brought up. And I really wanted to bring the point home, which I think I did for the first part of this episode, that your client really is your boss. Even though we don't sign your paycheck, at the end of the day, caregiver, we appreciate, we are your boss and we do appreciate you. And here's what I want to say also, because I've had caregivers say this and then do this, and then they get upset. They say, Nick, you're not my boss. You can't tell me what to do. Okay. Well, if that's the way you want it, okay. Well, then don't get mad when I call your boss, the one that signed your paycheck, and I tell them that you're late all the time. Or don't get mad when I call your boss and tell them that when I ask you to do something, you tell me that I'm not your boss. So, because you can't have it both ways. You can't get mad. You can't tell me that I'm not your boss and then get mad when I report you to your boss. So, like it's been said, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Which I don't understand, because if you're going to have cake, you're going to eat it. So what does that even mean? You can't have your cake and eat it. So I guess that means that you can't have your cake and be like, oh, it's so beautiful, I don't want to eat it. But then you're hungry because you want to eat. I guess that's how that phrase works. I don't know. Somebody tell me in the comments. But yeah, so, if I'm not your boss, that's okay. We can play that game. Just don't get mad when I call your boss. And honestly, caregivers, I say this all the time. I've coined this in my speeches. A caregiver is a friend when there are no friends to be found. People with disabilities struggle to make friends. I struggle to make friends. And you might just be the person that opens your client up to a loving friendship, because maybe they've struggled making friends before you. But then you have come in to their life and you said, look, I'm here to love you. I'm here to do what you need. and I'm here to do what you say. And I'm also here to be your best friend and have a good time. You might just crack your client's code of not wanting to socialize, not wanting to be with anybody. And two, if they know that you're there to support them and that you're there to love them no matter what, you may really get them to open up to you about issues that they struggle with at home. Like I said, you caregivers are so much more than a caregiver. You're a counselor, you're a life coach, you're, if you're religious and your client's religious, you minister to that client. And your client ministers to you. I know I've prayed for my caregivers many times, and they've said to me, I pray for you every day, and I appreciate that. And so, in many ways, you're ministering to your client. If you're a Christian and you're a caregiver, I truly believe that you are the hands and feet of Jesus, making your client's life possible. And so, it really is important to build that relationship and to have that good client, caregiver, boss rapport, because it'll just make your job so much easier as a caregiver. You won't go in wondering, oh, what am I going to get today? And some days it may be like that. Your client may be depressed. That's why I tell caregivers all the time, when you come to work, you have to leave your issues at your front door, because you're getting ready to walk into somebody's issues at their front door, and they're going to look to you to help handle them. And you have to be able to do that. Being a caregiver is a very emotionally taxing job. It is not just signing a piece of paper saying that you were there from 9 to 5 or 9 to 4 or 1 to 4 and then you go home. It is not. It is a emotionally taxing job. And you should say, well, they certainly don't pay that way. I know that, but here's the thing. If a caregiver is worth their salt, I truly believe this, the pay is not the first thing that they think about. Because a caregiver, a good caregiver, realizes that they're not here for the pay. They're here because they're called to be here. And they're here to help someone else live life. And if it wasn't for them being there to do that, the client wouldn't be there, wouldn't be able to live the life the way they live if it wasn't for the caregiver. So I hope this episode helps today. I really want to know what you guys think in the comments about especially the caregiver and the client relationship as it pertains to, like, I am the boss, I'm not the boss, my boss is the one who signs my paycheck. I really want to know what you think. And also, I want to say this before I go. I would much rather 100% have a caregiver from another country than an American caregiver. You know why? Because over the last 10 years that I've been in the system, the American caregiver has become so lazy. The caregivers that come from other countries look at this job as, I'm not just here to make money, I'm here to help my fellow man. And this is what we're supposed to do for each other. If we could get that back in our caregiving system, if we could get Americans to understand that they are here to care for their fellow man who can't care for themselves without the help of someone else, instead of always trying to chase a paycheck. I'm not saying it's wrong to have a good support for your family, but when you're coming into this job, you really can't have that as your primary focus. And a lot of the foreign A lot of the foreign caregivers don't have that focus. They just have 3 or 4 different jobs because they know they need it in order to survive. I mean, my caregivers are some of the most entrepreneurial people that I've ever seen. I mean, they're on the phone. If I'm in here filming or if I'm doing a TikTok or doing a media blitz, they're in the other room on the phone talking to their relatives, transferring money to them. They have other businesses back in Africa. This is not their bread. They know that they have to support their family, and they know that their job as a caregiver is not going to help them do that, unfortunately, full time. So they know that they have to have 3 or 4 positions here in America, as well as a business back home. So, if we could just get Americans to understand, like the foreign caregivers do, I'm here to help my fellow man. I'll worry about the paycheck. Secondly, I'll get a 3rd or 4th job if I have to. If we could get the Americans on the same page as a lot of my former caregivers are, it would be so awesome. And especially if we could get the caregivers all around, whether you're foreign or not, to realize it's about building relationships with your clients. It's not just about signing a piece of paper saying that you were there so you can get a paycheck that you're still going to say is not enough and have to go back to work tomorrow. It's about building a relationship with your client. So I hope this helps, and I would really like to know if you're in the caregiver field and what you think about today's episode. And I would really like to invite you to come talk about your caregiver experience and as a caregiver or a client, and just tell me what you think. So like I said at the beginning of the show, email me at nickspeaksofficial@gmail.com. And we will get you set up for a meeting and see if you're a good fit for Nick Speaks and go from there. Thanks for listening, guys. I am your host, Nick Comstock of the Nick Speaks podcast, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud about the issues that matter to the disabled the most. I will see you next week. Bye-bye.